Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I rise today to contribute to the Human Source Management Bill 2023, and firstly I'd like to acknowledge the work of the Attorney-General and the hard work that she has put into this bill, and of course those in her office that have assisted. I'd also like to acknowledge some of the stakeholders and organisations who were consulted with in relation to this bill, and that included Victoria Police, the Public Interest Monitor, IBAC, the Victorian Inspectorate, the Commission for Children and Young People, Victoria Legal Aid, and of course the Implementation Monitor. And of course the need for this bill arose from the Royal Commission into management of police informants, and which delivered its final report in November 2020, and the report contained 111 recommendations, and 54 of which are directed towards the current Victorian Government. The introduction of the Human Source Management Bill 2023 and consequently an amendment of the Victoria Police Act 2013 will single-handedly deliver on 25 of the recommendations outlined by the Commission by firstly providing for the registration, use and management of human sources by Victoria Police, and also providing for the external oversight of Victoria Police's use of human sources. And in doing that, we're going to be delivering on the recommendations 8 to 18, 44 to 56 and 58 of the Commission's outcomes. And part of our actions to ensure that the events investigated by the Commission will never happen again. And of course, none of us in this party, I think all flavours of politics, don't want to see a similar episode to what's happened in the Nicola Gobbo matter. The bill takes a risk-based approach to balance our community's safety needs with the requirements to uphold justice, and the risks that must be considered are the safety risk to the human source, risk to prosecution and administration of justice, risk of undermining trust in professional relationships. And Speaker, firstly, Acting Speaker, I would like to acknowledge and thank VicPol and all the members of VicPol for keeping our communities safe and for the great work that they do. And in particular in my electorate of it takes in Melton and Bacchus Marsh and the surrounding district out in the west there. They do amazing work through all parts of the community, in particular with our young. It's amazing what they try to do to keep some of our younger generation on the straight and narrow and out of trouble. So I commend all of them for all their efforts and I thank them. The Human Source Management Bill 2023 acknowledges the importance of human sources in our criminal justice system, and it ensures that these sources are registered, used in an ethical manner, and that informants who are at higher risk, our most vulnerable informants, which is our children, people with serious physical or mental health conditions, and those who have access to privileged information as defined by the Evidence Act, are protected. This bill is just one of the many actions being undertaken by the Andrews Labor government in response to the Commission in order to ensure the integrity of our criminal justice system, building on actions already taken by Victoria Police. And in addition to this bill, we have established the Office of the Special Investigator in accordance with the Special Investigator Act 2021. And of course, we'll continue to reform Victoria's disclosure regime in criminal proceedings. These actions directly affirm our party's core values and fairness and of achieving social justice. The introduction of this bill means that Victoria Police will have to formally register a person prior to using them as a human source, and with the exception of information provided to the police in a one-off interaction. So any person providing assistance to VicPol on a criminal matter, or who VicPol are using to gather information, will need to be registered as a human source. The human source must provide informed consent to their registration prior to being registered, and with the reasonable expectation of confidentiality relating to their interactions with Victoria Police. And the registration process will require an officer at the rank of senior officer or higher to approve registration of a non-reportable human source, and with the approval of an assistant commissioner or higher required to register high-risk informants. So by aligning the officer's seniority with the levels of risk, Victoria Police will be able to ensure that the use of a person as a human source is justified and appropriate, and that any risks are managed appropriately. And of course, appropriate boundaries are to be set for the human source relationship, including establishing the purpose of the registration and any conditions to be placed on that registration. So registered and non-reportable sources are those who have an ongoing relationship with police but don't meet the other risk criteria. And registered and reportable sources are deemed higher risk. They require registration, even if providing one-off information only. So this is especially important for protecting our most vulnerable human sources, and that's the young people under 18 years of age. And I acknowledge that the Greens have put forward through the member for Brunswick some amendments in regard to people aged 14 years or under, seeking some amendments, and I'm sure that that matter will be dealt with in the appropriate fashion. To register a young person as a human source, Victoria Police must show that there is a serious threat to national security, the community, or the life and welfare of a person, or that a serious offence is being investigated. And there must also be no other way of obtaining that information. And that is a protection mechanism for the younger people involved in this process. Young people must be treated as a high-risk, reportable human source, meaning the public interest monitor and a senior police officer must be involved in the registration decision. So there are a number of, not hurdles, but a number of steps to work through before they can be registered. Specialist advice must be considered before the young person can be registered as a human source, such as from a psychologist or a social worker in regard to that young person's capacity, I suppose, and welfare in regard to seeking that advice from those medicos. The young person's best interest and the impact of registration on their well-being must be considered prior to registration. And again, we know these types of investigations and involvements in such processes like this can really cause anxiety and stress for people, and certainly for someone so young. And that's why, again, there has to be some advice from a psychologist or social worker for that person, that younger person, to participate. And we know the impact can cause significant trauma to individuals being involved in some serious matters that are being investigated by VicPol. So the young person's best interest and the impact of registration on their wellbeing is considered, again, as I said, and sought advice from those medicos such as a psychologist. And of course the young person is entitled to legal assistance at key stages of the process, and that's only fair that they be represented by a legal representative, as would be normal. And in addition to the young person's own informed consent, police must also obtain the informed consent of the young person's parent or guardian to register them. The bill also entitles all children to have a parent, guardian or independent person present during their key interactions. And Victoria Police are prohibited from using a child aged 14 years or younger as a human source. However, they are still permitted to receive information from a child of this age if the child discloses information to VicPol. In the short time that I've got left, I know that in regard to this human source management bill, the issue of VicPol and the contribution and funding provided by the Andrews Labor government over a number of years, I think it is in excess of $4 billion, and also the recruitment of many more police officers across the state to be able to do their job. And as I acknowledged earlier in my contribution, the members of our Victorian Police do a wonderful job under trying circumstances. It's not an easy job. They do their best every day. Some things don't always work out as the best outcomes, but I know that they're keeping us safe and working day and night when we're all home, resting and enjoying ourselves at times and staying safe. And as I say, I acknowledge their efforts, their hard-earned efforts, and I appreciate what they do, and in particular out in my electorate. This is an important bill, and I commend this bill to the House.